Today on Outside the Box Reviews, we are taking a look at the NECA Halloween Ends Michael Myers figure. A year later, NECA finally rounds out the trilogy of the new Michael Myers saga, bringing us, I guess, the last piece. I'm still kind of hoping for a flashback figure, but in theory, this is the last main release we would really need to complete the new versions of Michael. I honestly wasn't sure I was even going to pick this figure up, because I really hated Halloween Ends. And I rewatched it for this review, and I still really hate Halloween Ends. But local comic shop was having a sale, and I needed to buy another figure to kind of meet their quota for the sale price to take effect. So I added this guy into my set. But just because it was a lackluster movie doesn't mean it has to be a lackluster figure, right? So let's go ahead and take a closer look at this guy and see how he stacks up. So Michael comes with a total of 3 knives. I think it's really technically 2 of one type of knife, a bloody and a non-bloody, and then 1 of a different type. So on the top here we have what I think is just the Farberware Edgekeeper knife from Kills. I'm not 100% sure if these are the knives that are actually in this movie or if this is just NECA reusing parts. But the interesting thing is, and I guess mild spoiler alert, but Michael doesn't use these knives, I don't think. Neither does even Corey. I believe these are the ones that Laurie uses at the end of the film. I don't think Michael ever really wields one of them. We do have a bloody and a non-bloody version. And both of these knives, I think we've talked about them before, they're nicely detailed. The rivets are nice and clear. The silver is a nice silver. They're a little bit not as clean as you'd want them to be, but, you know, we're zoomed in pretty far here, so I'm not going to judge them too badly. The blood could use some work. It looks a little flat, but overall it looks all right. On the bottom here, we have the Chicago Cutlery 44S. And this knife is definitely undersized in figure form. So the knife here, basically, like I said, the same model from Kills, would have been an 8-inch blade, but the Chicago Cutlery knife was a 10-inch blade, so it should be a longer knife than these other two. And what I think they did was just repaint this other knife that came with the Kills figure. I don't remember the model of this knife in particular, but you could see it has that kind of barrel section coming off of the blade. And notably, it has that blade guard, which is not present on the Chicago Cutlery knife. But you may be saying, well, why does it matter? It's close enough. NECA wouldn't want to go make a brand new knife, a new mold, new tooling, just to pull this off. It's not like they used the same damn knife in Friday the 13th Part 7 that they already made a version of. This is all you had to do. You just had to take this knife and make it dirty. Instead, they gave us something that is not movie accurate. And again, this is being super nitpicky with it. But seriously, come on, Randy. This was right there. Flip mode to the other side. Same paint details really existing here. I should say, they did a really nice job with the rust detail on the Chicago Cutlery knife. I think it was a little bit darker in the movie, but I like this in terms of a rust paint effect, especially for a mass-produced piece. I actually think it looks a lot better than what Trick or Treat Studios gave us on their life-size model. So I'll definitely give it points for that, despite having the wrong mold. Another thing I do want to point out with the Chicago Cutlery knife, though, is that not only does it have that kind of guard on it that shouldn't be there, they didn't paint it with the same rust effect, so it's rusty on the front of the blade in front of that, and it's rusty behind that. But if you're looking at the figure dead on like this, you have this nice kind of clean silver bit. So I wish I would have at least painted this up with that same rust texture if they were going to have the wrong model knife. But here he is holding the Part 7 knife. And honestly, while I think they kind of exaggerated this Part 7 knife a little bit, they're a lot closer with this than they are with what they gave us. Just to further demonstrate that size comparison, here is the real deal knife, the Farberware from Kills. And then here is the real deal knife from Ends, the Chicago Cutlery knife. So it's kind of hard to get in one shot together on here. You can see it is a much longer blade on the Ends knife. As we've come to expect with these figures, Michael comes with a jack-o'-lantern. This one is, I believe, from the opening credits, not one that I remember seeing at all in the movie itself. But it is a cool design. I like the really jagged jaw on it. It has kind of the skeletal nose, and the eyes are equally jagged. They did a nice job painting it up. It has some nice different shades of orange and yellows going on around there. We spin around to the back, not a whole lot going on, we can see the seam going around the top where you would have cut open the top of the pumpkin. It doesn't seem to be removable. It doesn't light up or anything like that either. I do like that you have this option because every so often I think it's cool if you just want pumpkins on display for a scene that you're trying to shoot, you could turn them around and have just bare pumpkins where you can't see a face on them. Obviously, you get a bit more limitation here because you do have that cutter on the top, so that may kind of mess things up. But overall, I think it's a really nice little accessory. We get a total of 5 hands with this figure. We get 3 left hands and 2 right hands. Starting over here on the side, we have kind of a tighter gripped left hand. Next to that is more of a relaxed version. Then we have kind of a pinching version or a slight gesturing version. Initially, I thought maybe this was the hand that we got for holding the mask last time with the Kills figure, but that was a bandaged hand, so they would have had to have redone it one way or another. Then, of course, we have a knife-holding right hand, and then an addition I wasn't really expecting, but a welcome one, we have a relaxed right hand. Not something you get with Myers all that often, but I kind of like that we have it. Overall, I like the flesh tone they put on this. I like the weathering they put on this. The details are nice. I mean, zoomed in this far, you could see the fingernails, you could see the knuckle wrinkles, all that stuff. Came out pretty good. Taking a look at our messed up hands a little closer, they did incorporate some nice texture of the scar from the burn. I do wish they would have kind of brought the coloration of the fingers up onto this a little bit. I get that they were probably trying to go for more of like a shiny burn texture, like, you see on actual burn victims. However, since they're kind of weathering up the hands, making them dirty, this skin would have gotten dirty too. So it feels like this should have been a little bit darker because it kind of looks like he's wearing a glove. Granted, he was wearing a silicone glove in the movie, the actor was, but I think they could have added a little bit of that weathering in here and kind of blended them a little bit more because it looks a little abrupt here. And that flipping everything over, the detail continues on to the other side of the hands. But even here you can see like the fingers are significantly dirtier and then the palm is a lighter color. So they kind of just did a weird paint job with this in general. But they do have all the wrinkles on the underside of the hand and it all looks pretty darn good. And then you can see they blended it a bit better on at least the open hand for his right hand. It's still a little more pale on the palm, but I think the dirt kind of blends into it a little bit more than it does on the injured side. As I think we've gotten with most of these newer Myers figures, we get 2 head sculpts, but again, they are very similar head sculpts. I see some minor differences in terms of paint that I cannot be sure is intentional or not. I do see there's some differences with the hair. The one on the left seems to have a bit poofier hair than the one on the right where it's more slicked back. Can't see it at this angle, but we'll play around with it in a minute. I think you can see the eyes a little better on one, but once again, don't know if that's a paint application thing or not. I believe in the past, people have told me one of these was supposed to be James Jude Courtney, and one of these was supposed to be Nick Castle. I don't even think Nick Castle's scenes made it into this movie. I don't know if it's Ryan Turek's scenes or something that we have represented here, but they look very similar to the point of it seeming unnecessary. We'll start with the burnt sides of the faces, and I do like the detail here. It is pretty dark. I am noticing now that the bottom of the neck on the left one is a bit more chewed up and the one on the right is a little more intact. I think some of the scarring on the left one may be a bit deeper as well. On mine, the paint on the one on the left is a lot darker too, more charred looking. I think these are both a little too dark, to be quite honest. I feel like they really toned back the char look for ends. So what we're seeing here is a very Kills looking mask. Honestly, I do think they just reused the Kills head sculpt, to be quite honest with you. And my main evidence of that is on this side of the face where we have the gunshot wound. It does look to be sagging a little bit more on the one on the right now that I look at it really close up. So a little bit of sculptural difference there too. A little bit more deformity in the neck on the one on the left on this side as well. Just a tiny bit, but a little bit there. But what I was getting to is, I think, from the reference photos I've looked at, I believe the gunshot wound for the ends mask was kind of sculpted to actually be a little bit more horizontal on the face. I don't know if it was supposed to be that the mask had drooped or something else had changed, but it's still kind of more 45-degree angled, which is what they had on the Kills mask. I think they also went a little heavy on the blood here. I wish they would have toned the blood down because there really isn't much blood left there at all on the ends mask. Zoomed in, they look pretty good, but I do think these do need a repaint, to be quite honest. Here's the back of the heads. You can see the hair is a bit different on each. Like I said, the one mask is a bit poofier in the hair. They both have the slit going up the back, which looks pretty good. And then spinning back around to the front, it's hard to see on camera, but our mask on the right, you could see the eyes a little bit clearer through the mask than you can the one on the left. And honestly, just because the one on the left is a little more worn out and more brutal looking, it kind of becomes my preferred mask of the two, though they're pretty close. Looking at the rest of the figure, this is very similar to the body we got on the last two Myers releases. However, they did add some additional detailing here. Along his upper torso, we do have some additional gunshot wounds. I'm trying to remember, I believe these were actually from the end of Kills. Like the mask, they did bloody these up quite a bit, where I feel like they should not actually be bloody open wounds. Maybe some dried blood, but this is very much red blood they've got going on here that really just looks pretty fresh. The overall coverall design is the same. We have the pocket on the one side sticking out. We have the same kind of wrinkles and everything. The color on this one seems a bit lighter and maybe a bit glossier than like the Kills release. We'll show them side by side in a little bit later. They did also add that mold effect that's mostly around his shoulders, but you could also see it kind of around the pockets and around his hips. In terms of the side, you see a little bit more of that mold going on with his shoulder. We do still have that slash in his upper arm, again with a lot of reddish blood going on there that I wish was toned down. The overall wrinkles and everything going down his sleeve look pretty good. Detail's pretty nice. Articulation's decently well hidden as well. Flip him around to his other side, you can see that arm as well. Similar thing going on, some more mold and a lot of wrinkles and everything. And then the back. More mold still, more gunshot wounds, like all the exit wounds and everything. I think there's probably some stab wounds in there too. All the same kind of wrinkles. We got the pockets going on the back of his coveralls. Like with the previous releases, because he has those big square pockets on the back, the kind of rubberized butt flap of this figure does go down a bit lower than they tend to on these. I always call it the diaper because it kind of fits like a diaper. But here it actually comes down a bit more over the top of the back of the leg just to keep that pocket detail intact. Going further down the figure in the back, he's got a lot more wrinkle detail there on the back of his coveralls, going down to the bottom. And then flip around to the front, more of the same going. You can see how it kind of piles up there at the top of his boots. The boots themselves are pretty nicely done. They actually look like they're different boots than the Kills version, which is something I wasn't expecting. So much of this figure does feel reused. I'm surprised that they actually sculpted different boots for him. I believe the boots changed every installment of the film. I could be wrong about that. I know the ones used in 2018 became really hard to get after everybody started buying them for their cosplays. And I don't remember for sure off the top of my head if they changed between Kills and Ends, but I'm assuming they did. But the sculpt here definitely is different. The feet actually seem a little bit smaller than with the previous release as well, which isn't always the best thing. Alright, articulation's going to be fun on this because I just had my knuckles tattooed the other day, so yeah, my hand doesn't work quite as well as I'd like it to. But we do have a ball joint at the base of the neck, so you can look a little bit up, a little bit down, hindered of course by the neck. Get a little bit of pivot. You got to have that pivot there for Michael, and then we can swivel side to side with it. Arms, we'll do a full 360. They'll tuck in pretty darn close to the body, and they'll go out maybe about 45 degrees. The elbow has a double joint in it, so we could bend that pretty much past 90 degrees, which is actually pretty nice. And then we could also rotate at that elbow as well. The hand is on a joint where we can rotate it, and then we can swivel it or hinge it, basically. I gotta figure out where it's hinging right now. You can move the hinge to wherever you want it to be. So you could like move the hand, rotate the hand, and then get the hinge picked up in that direction. So really you have whatever range of motion you want out of those wrists within reasons of, you know, the movement of that hinge. You could get them to bend at whatever angle you really want them to be at. So I really do like these wrist pegs. Even though they're a little small and I do worry plugging hands into them, they work pretty well. As with all these coverall figures, there's a waist joint in there. You can feel it. You can't really do anything with it. The legs will kick pretty darn far forward. Decent amount back as well. Get them out to the side pretty far. We have a rotation at the upper leg. We have a single joint at the knee, which bends just under 90 degrees. We could also rotate at that knee joint. And then his foot will bend down, it'll bend up, and it will pivot. Actually, we'll rotate as well, so that's really nice. Good range of motion there on his feet. And then we do get tread patterns and peg holes at the bottom of his feet. For a size comparison, here he is in the middle next to his trilogy mates. So 2018 there on the left and Kills on the right. I thought it'd be more obvious when I put them side by side that it was the same mask from Kills. Realizing now it really isn't. And apparently Kills, the figure, is as lazy as the writing from that movie because he keeps trying to lay down. I thought it'd be more obvious that the masks for those two were the same when I put them side by side, but the paint is so different on them, and I think the hair is different too, that it really doesn't show as much as I thought it was going to show here. And now that I look at it together, the boots on the ends are actually the same boots from the 2018, and there's just different boots on the Kills version, which is an interesting choice. But yeah, this shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. These guys are all basically the same size because they're all basically the same figure. Well, let's bring in another character I don't think is going to stand well, but Laurie Strode. So she's definitely a good bit shorter than Michael. I'm glad we got this version of Laurie in figure form because I don't think I would have wanted her from any of the other installments in this trilogy. But it'd be nice to go get a classic one eventually. Now let's go take a little bit of a flashback and put them next to H1 and H2. Okay, I'm cheating. This H1 is just a modified 2018 figure with the Ben Schramer head also modified on him. But the H2 is H2, so that is the actual Warlock figure. And just to throw in some other horror icons, we got Jason from part 7 there on the right, and of course Ash there on the left. And it's kind of nice to see more of a normal-sized human male next to these figures. Because Laurie's dwarfed, but I kind of expect that. But it's kind of cool to see, what would be a normal dude next to the Shape and Jason. And hey, while we're comparing stuff with the figure, let's compare all of our 10 billion pumpkins we've gotten. This isn't even all of them. I got more random-ass pumpkins from other sets and things. But I think all of these are NECA pumpkins. So definitely a nice supply of jack-o'-lanterns we've got going on from NECA as well. Randy.
Hey, what's up, dude?
What the hell are you doing down here in the sewer?
Oh, just checking up on some Twitter messages.
Don't you know that for no good goddamn reason Michael Myers is down here slowly getting covered with mold and not doing Michael Myers things because plot devices?
Yeah, not really worried about it.
What the hell do you mean you're not really worried about it? He's gonna come here and stab you. Even if you give him the wrong fucking knife, he's still probably gonna stab you with it.
Yeah, but he's not nearly as bad as some of the other clowns that hang out down here.
Hey! Well, great. I thought Myers was going to kill Randy, but instead they decided to team up for some godforsaken reason, even though they know that is going to be the least possible satisfying ending to this series of reviews. Whatever. At the end of the day, it's hard to really evaluate this figure fairly for me because I fucking hated ends. And obviously, I want to give a fair review of the thing. And overall, as a figure, independent of its film, I think it's a decent release. I think it has some painting issues with the head sculpts, particularly around the blood. Pretty annoyed about the knife thing, as I've already kind of said. The hand as well, with the paint on there, is a bit weird. And while we've gotten this body multiple times before, it is a really nicely articulated body. It does its job well. He came with a fair selection of hands for a figure like him. He came with 3 knives. He came with a jack-o'-lantern. Came with a secondary head sculpt. I would have preferred, and maybe instead of getting 2 versions of the mask, that we get something more like a unmasked James Jude Courtney head, or that's about it. I was gonna say a Corey head. I don't want a Corey head. Just keep it with the unmasked face, because we do see that more in this movie than we do in any of the other ones in this trilogy. There are other choices they could have made that I think would have been better, but overall I do think it's a pretty solid release. So if you were a fan of ends, or like me, you just are a completionist and wanted to round out the set, I think it is actually worth your time to pick it up. If you're more on the fence about it in general, and you have the other 2 figures from this trilogy, and you don't feel a completionist urge, I think it's an easy one to skip. Really doesn't have a whole lot new going on for it, but I do think the new bits on it are still good bits. So if that's not the most half-hardened endorsement of a figure I've ever made, I don't know what is. But yeah, let me know in the comments below. Are you picking this one up? Is it a pass? What did you think of ends? I'm kind of assuming most people hated it, because that's been my experience talking to people. Although I've met a few people that liked it, but it seemed like the reason for liking it was, haha, people wanted a good Michael Myers movie and they gave him the opposite. What a fucking troll. So I don't really know how much stock to take in that. But yeah, enough of me ranting about this movie. I'll see you all in the next one. Later.